I want to welcome everybody to today's episode of the Daily Cheat Sheet. We're here with Golan Monmaz and Marcus Men Stern. And obviously, right off the bat, the shooting that occurred last night at the Jewish Museum in the nation's capital in the United States of America. A Christian and a Jew, both from the Israeli embassy, were shot dead on the streets of the nation's capital last night. It took, I want to say, a couple hours for Fox News to actually make this a story. And that's an embarrassment in itself. But to the bigger point, for the better part of 2 or 3 years, we've had anti Semitism running rampant around college campuses. We've had world leaders stoking anti Semitism. We've had anti Semitism run amok in our lifetimes. I don't know what Berlin was like in 1933, but it sure doesn't seem like a good time to be a Jew in America right now. Golan, this is obviously infuriating, and I call out both sides.
First of all, you're absolutely right. I want to, before I get into this, I just want to say their names, the people, the victims of this horrible crime. It was Yaron Mushchinsky and Sarah Milgram, and they, by all accounts, were people that were deeply committed to the peace process, were deeply committed to, and in some political things I may not even agree with them on, but they were deeply committed to coexistence. The people who targeted them, the person that ultimately took their lives, was someone that, as we'll get into, was shouting "Free Palestine," said, "I did this for Gaza," had no idea who he was targeting, why he was targeting. He just went to this place because he wanted to kill some Jews. And why did that happen? And I don't want to say this as dispassionately as I can, because the point of our show is not to be screaming heads and not to try and inflame tension, not to try and spread rumor. I want to try and look at this through the prism of something very specific. I want to draw a straight line, because the media won't, because the media is complicit in this. Okay. Yesterday, we talked about the UN spreading a lie about 14,000 babies going to die in 48 hours, a blood libel, as we talked about yesterday. The mainstream media amplified that lie. Social media radicalized that lie, as we talked about yesterday. Billions of views, thousands, millions of interactions. A terrorist sees this and acts on it, thinking that gunning down a couple of Jews in America is righteous resistance, not murder. I'm doing it for Gaza. This is going to free Palestine somehow. And as if that's not bad enough, today the media is still spinning it. I want to get into this in a moment, but I want to give Marcus an opportunity to talk on this too, and to talk about the fact that Trump immediately came out and said something. Marcus, I'm going to pass it on because I have something longer to talk about here.
Absolutely. So I think there's a couple of things here. One is I hate it when we talk about this type of stuff and we say on the right and on the left. Let's just focus on the issue at hand. The violence that occurred yesterday was by a radical leftist coming out of the free justice in Palestine movement. And he went to a Jewish museum, not knowing that there were Israelis there. He went to kill Jews. He wound up killing a Jew and a Christian. So the fact that they happened to be working for the embassy is beside the fact. That wasn't part of his intention. He didn't know that. That was just a bonus. So, when we talk about people that inflame and incite this stuff, today, this instance, this violence was born out of the left, and it came from the incitement that's happening at the universities. Thank God this administration is shutting it down, but the left has been excusing what's been going on in that environment for a long time. So today, let's talk about that. If there's something else that happens on another day where it's someone from the right, I will call that out immediately. But I don't want to do this whataboutism and try to equalize it. Today, that was what it was about. And this guy, let's not call him a terrorist. I mean, what he did was an act of terror, but he was a radical lefty. He was someone who was indoctrinated by that crazy shit. He believed all this shit that we've been, discussing every day, and he acted upon it. And a lot of what I'm seeing afterwards and seeing now, posted online, is people justifying what this guy did.
And we knew that was going to happen. And go on, before I get to you, I just want to get to Men's point. And I want to
Yeah.
remind him, Dave Smith, Joe Rogan, that whole crowd were leftists. They were all Bernie bros. So again, with messaging, this comes from AOC, right? We're almost positive he belonged to a group with AOC, links to Bernie Sanders. So let's not kid ourselves. Whether I don't even want, you're right. Let's not label right this, that, but we do know that our party, the conservative movement, has adopted many people into it who used to be in the far left, but they liked a few issues of Trump better than they liked a few issues of Harris, and they are in our party. But go on, once again, Dave Smith, Rogan, every single one of these people were Bernie bros.
And this is you're talking about social media, you're talking about podcasts. But for me right now, the thing that I am most infuriated about, and I'm trying to speak about it in a very measured way, is the media. Because the media
Yes.
is, again, the legitimizing force. I'm putting this in heavy scare quotes, of course, because the media didn't just report on this, they weaponized what happened yesterday with the blood libel, and they turned it into a justification for violence. And it's not over, because today, as I was doing research to make sure that I was up to date on everything for our show, I went to look at BBC and Guardian and CNN and Fox News and everything in between. I try to be as balanced as possible when I'm looking at the news. And here's what I found: BBC, right alongside the article about the murdered Jews, ran an article right after the UN lied yesterday and caused all of this, that quotes the same UN lying again about Israel not doing enough in Gaza. The Guardian has an article right next to the shooting, I'm sorry, not next to the shooting, in the article about the shooting, multiple paragraphs about the war in Gaza, making it sound like Israel is at fault, as if that context almost excuses the murder. CNN, same thing. In the article, they start talking about aid and basically it's not reporting. This is narrative management. This is something that basically is saying it's not isolated bias. It's a systemic and systematic campaign of disinformation, spreading the anti-Jewish story across every platform evenly. And if you are a consumer of this media, why would you not think this is going to happen? What did they think was going to happen in amplifying these stories? And they continue to, even after they have caused, in a roundabout way, and in some cases a straight line, actual murder.
It's a great point. And Mend, to his point, we're all in the same age range. So we're all in the age range when Tipper Gore, remember this, when Tipper Gore wanted to put labels on CDs, on discs, that because she believed that this was causing violence. There was never any proof of this, but this was a thing of Tipper Gore's. And of course, you had the Christian Coalition or Brett Bozell doing this in the 80s with television shows. No, never a cause and never proof. We actually have proof now because these people have and are writing manifestos. So there's no doubt what caused this, man. He exactly wrote why he did this, where he was getting his information from. And there's going to come to a point, man, where we're really going to have to start. And the biggest First Amendment advocate you will ever meet. But we have to say out loud as a people, shows like Cenk Younger, Rogan, Smith, obviously the legacy media, and go on, you're international, we're here, so you're getting more. You go to the Guardian and the Daily UK, which have been cesspools for years, but
Absolutely.
come to America where it's been a little different, where CNN, as bad as they've been, we're always sort of friendly, a little friendlier to Israel. Man, that's totally changed.
Yeah, it has totally changed. And the podcasters that are out there, the Cenk Youngers, the guys that are Turkish that deny the Turkish Armenian genocide, those are the talking heads on the left. The Joe
Some
Rogans,
Piker is a great example.
yep. The Joe Rogan, it's worth noting that Tim Pool called out Theo Von yesterday for his support, whatever he mentioned about the genocide in Palestine. I give Tim Pool a lot of credit for that. You know, Tim is very knowledgeable in a lot of this stuff, and way more than Theo is on this topic. And Theo admits himself that he doesn't know what's going on, but he was acting out of emotion. So, you know, I think there are some voices, and that's pretty much why we're here, is to lend a voice to reason, to, you know, come back to critical thinking and rationality. So, you know, I think that's kind of the only thing we can do. The pushback that we can do is put out good information counters bad information.
I just want to point out something since you're talking about, since I mentioned Hassan Piker, who's related to Cenk Uygur, by the way, who is not only a terror supporter out loud, very, broadcasting the Houthis, celebrating Hezbollah and everything else. He also is a guy who Bernie Sanders and AOC go and sit and interview with. They're not even hiding the fact that they're dovetailing between the two. The shooter in this case was a Twitch user. One of the most popular Twitch users is Hassan Piker, who is just spreading blood libels and anti-Jewish or Jewish hatred on a regular basis. That amplification is something that's really important, and it goes to another thing that happened. When they arrested this guy, they made sure that there were cameras present. He was able to shout his phrasing. He was able to shout his messaging. He was able to, get visibility. What we're doing, as usual, but only when it suits the narrative, is we're making monsters into martyrs. We're giving terrorists a microphone. And that is, once again, media complicity. I mean, that's essentially radical recruitment, right? Because how are copycats born? It's just like the Luigi Mangione thing, right? Oh, look at this handsome guy. He killed a CEO. And then suddenly all these other people were cheering him on. There's a musical about the guy coming out. This is now going to be yet another one of those situations where it's almost giving permission to those racists, those genocidal people to say, hey, that guy just got celebrated. The media just put him on every website and every TV screen. Why wouldn't I do it too?
I want to thank Golan for stealing my talking point, but you did it better than I would have done it, Golan. And that is, Mend, the fact that I would imagine that the police station in the nation's swamp has a back door. I would imagine that. And the fact that they brought this guy in the front door, the fact that the media was there filming this, and this again goes to the media. The media has a responsibility. We know for 8 years they didn't report any truth, 8 to 10 years, but they did not report any truth. For a moment last night, they couldn't have held back from fine filming it to actually releasing the footage. That is a dangerous thing. The media used to have safeguards against these things. They really did. They waited to publish things that could lead to more danger. That's gone, Mendy. The guardrails are gone in the media. And to Golan's point, watching this person's image, it's a fairly handsome guy, lucid. We could only imagine, men, what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about the responsibility of the media for a while. I think we saw a lot of that yesterday with the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa's meeting with Trump in the White House, where Trump broke out videos that show thousands of white crosses alongside the road for as long as the eye can see, and each one represents a farmer or his wife or his kids that were murdered in South Africa because they're white farmers. And you have the media immediately going into spin mode afterwards. So we see it. We've talked about it. I think, we're all acknowledging that it's there, and which is the reason to have alternate sources where you don't just rely on, legacy media or one, podcaster. You get your sources from multiple sources, and then you could discern for yourself what's accurate.
Yeah. If you platform evil, you're part of it. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
But I also want to bring up something important. And this is this. In Judaism, we believe bloodline, that Judaism is born through the bloodline of the mother. And that's something that has kept us for thousands of years. Probably smaller than we should be, but that has kept us at a certain number go on. But Dave Smith, you keep on seeing on his profile, advocate, the Jewish advocate. Dave Smith is not Jewish. Okay. His grandfather is Jewish. With that being, it may be. With that being said, what these people don't realize is eventually, and this was through the Nuremberg trials, right? It was what Hitler killed, who Hitler killed. Dave Smith doesn't realize he could be next. And if we don't stop this now, if people don't call for action right now, immediately shutting down these campus protests, immediately shutting down when people go into Jewish neighborhoods, screaming from the river to the sea, Intifada now, and all these different things. If we do not shut this down now, this really is only the beginning.
I just want to say one thing because it's important for people to know these are not three people who are always ideologically aligned. These are not three people that are always going to repeat each other's talking points. I happen to disagree that even though that was it's a tenet of Judaism, it's kind of an antiquated one. I happen to not bother with that. I think if someone has a Jewish parent, they're Jewish. If someone converts to Judaism, they go through the process, they're Jewish. To me, those kind of qualifications don't matter. But what is important is all of the people, and this is where we will probably be aligned, all of the people who claim to be Jewish or who what I call Jews in name only, or Jews only when it's convenient, or Jews only when I can hate on Israel, those people who have no connection to Judaism and only have a little bit of blood in their system and don't care about it unless they can say as a Jew in order to badmouth Jews, or as a Jew in order to badmouth Israel. The Boots Rileys of the world, the trash who pretend to be Jewish or suddenly discover their Judaism when it's convenient because now they can get some points on the JVP side of the equation.
I think Zelensky is the perfect example, by the way. I think Zelensky is just totally an interesting point that I want people to know. When he was calling immediately for Israel's help during his tenure, short tenure as the head of Ukraine, he voted 17 times against Israel. Out of guess how many times? 17. Just the fact. Mend, what say you about this?
I was going to say it's the same thing with the Norm Finkelsteins and all these people that have zero going on besides for bashing Israel. The Katie Halperin, Norm Finkelstein,
the Hannah Einbinder,
Ben Cohen.
Yeah, so you have these people, and that's their claim to fame, and that's what Dave Smith is doing. He's just a demented person. When you have somebody that has consistent thoughts, if they're social justice warriors or whatever, and they're calling out every single war out there, and they dedicate the appropriate time to each. And by appropriate, I mean in order of magnitude to the actual conflict. So people dying, if there's a lot of people dying in the Sudan, you would expect them to pay a disproportionate amount of time to that one. The fact that they all focus in on this one thing and then they go as a Jew, blah, 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 you could discredit them immediately. So I think we've hashed this one out. I wanted to talk about the Golden Dome that President Trump is talking about creating for America. I think it's a genius idea.
Just to recap about what we just spoke about, we're speaking about the news and the events that occurred last night, what led up to it, not what we believe. We have to take this terrorist for his word. They have his manifesto. He openly admitted to why he did this. Going to Trump and his beautiful big golden dome. And Golan, why do I think I have images in my head of gold? I think it's a great idea. This reminds me a lot. You're a little older than me, but I think this reminds me a lot of Reagan and Star Wars. And my only fear with this Golden Dome, the reason the Iron Dome or David's Sling or David's Arrow, David's Sling, or any of Israel's defense forces work is because it's the size of New Jersey. Okay, so you're able to build that when you have which state gets picked? And I think it's a great idea that he's trying to do something like this. I do. I think it's a fabulous, amazing idea. What are your thoughts on this, Golan?
Well, look, I'm half Israeli, and I have watched the Iron Dome be unbelievably successful in terms of protecting Israeli civilians. I have an entire rant my friend Guy Goldstein and I talk about on a regular basis where we actually think the Iron Dome has maybe done more damage than it's helped in terms of making people be able to say, but look at how few people have died on this side of the equation, as if thousands of missiles and rockets and bombs haven't been launched. So it's almost like the fact that we defended ourselves means we shouldn't be protected. But putting that aside, I think it's a great idea to, especially in a world that's getting crazier and crazier, and look no further than what happened yesterday on a local scale, but we're talking about on a grand scale. The idea of being able to protect a nation in a way that is kind of unconventional, is a way that is tech forward, and frankly, it is also a big signal to the world. America unapologetically is visibly strong, is visibly protected. You know, it's not about. I don't want to say it's nationalism in a negative way. I think it's pro nation, and you know, I don't know if there's it's a fine line maybe between those two things, but one can be looked at in a negative light. I think the other one is just saying, look, we've had a lot of gray bureaucracy for a very long time. It's time for us to do something new. And in the long run, it also might decrease the defense budget, which is something that isn't a bad idea either.
See, Mend, before I get to this is I agree and I disagree with Golan. So actually, I'm glad you brought this up. I think it's incredibly important for the United States to spend as much money on defense as humanly possible.
Mhm.
I don't care. We have to, if it costs billions or trillions to spend on defense. You can never spend too much money on defense. And so to Mend, to your point, if he could actually start this, I don't care how much money this costs. We have plenty of money to spend on a program like this. Let's do the Golden Dome.
Well, the Golden Dome, to what you said before was like, Israel can do it because they're small and we're really big. That's a giant whiny lefty argument as to why they wouldn't do it. It's absolute horseshit. You
He's
just
really
need,
coming after me today with the
no, I'm just saying is that it's 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 easily implementable. You just need to scale it up. If you scale up what the Israelis did, we could cover the entire United States. And now Canada's asking to get in on it too. And that'll be an interesting negotiation because they ran, the Prime Minister of Canada ran on an anti-Trump platform, and we're going to, divest and decouple from America. Now here they are back at the table asking us to protect them too. So yeah, it's a worthwhile endeavor. I think it'll succeed. We already have the THAAD system. We have the Patriot system. We have the Israeli uh, technology that we help them create. And in exchange, we get a lot of that technology back. So it's doable. It should be done. If you look at these drone swarms that China is developing, and then you look at the Ukraine-Russia war, which turned into a drone war, and if you think about what that would look like if there was an altercation with China, you would see what's happening in Ukraine on a colossally bigger scale. So millions of drones coming out of drone ships that the Chinese would send here, and we would not be able to defend ourselves unless we have something already built out. So build that
I,
out for sure.
I want to jump off of that for just a moment. Actually, sorry, I know I'm gonna add another unplanned news story, but very very short, which is watching parts of Europe say we're going to maybe divest ourselves from Israel. You know, falling victim to what we were talking about yesterday. And it's interesting. There was a chart done recently that was talking specifically about how the innovation that comes out of Israel is so massive. I mean, this is startup nation, of course, that if they decide to do this, they're actually shooting themselves in the foot. They're cutting off their nose to spite their face. And specifically to what you were saying about defense, unmanned aerial vehicles, the drones you're talking about, missile defense systems, defense electronics, cybersecurity technology, not to mention what's going on in healthcare, not to mention what's going on in agriculture and environmental stuff. The stuff coming out of Israel is the hardest to replace of any tech in the world. So in doing this, they're basically saying, you know what, we're cool taking ourselves back to the Stone Age to make sure that the Jews get a little finger wag. Just wanted to point it out.
No, and you both bring up great points, and which leads to the big beautiful bill that got passed, which I think we have to give claps and kudos to President Trump that he was able to get this passed. Getting anything passed by one vote. But to the bigger point that you just brought up without realizing what you just brought up is the argument from the Tucker Carlsons, from the Dave Smiths, from everybody, is Iran is 7,000 or 8,000 miles away. What potential danger do they cause us? They never look at China, first of all, with the weaponization of COVID. Take that out of the equation. We know they've been building bases in Cuba. We know that they've their drone system. We know what they're doing in the oceans. We know what they're doing all around the world and in America, having Chinese police stations. We know all of these things go on. And it's sort of a fascinating thing that they use Israel as a reason not to attack Iran because they pose no danger, immediate danger to us. But China at the same time poses an immediate danger to us.
Well,
Look, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say is that one is Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon because they've been state-sponsored terrorism across the Middle East and now in South America as well. So that's just a non-starter. And to say that we're that far away from it, is a ridiculous argument. It always comes over here anyway. The Chinese taking over the islands in South China Sea. I mean, there's a lot that the Chinese are doing. The Chinese are playing the 50-year game where they are planning to dominate the world, and they have a roadmap on how to get there, and it's a long game. We're doing, reactionary stuff. But back to the bill, thank God we got that passed. I hope it goes all the way through. Those tax cuts become permanent. I'd like to get to the point where we have smaller government, where we have almost no tax, and all foreign aid should be voted on by the people. There should be zero foreign aid to any country unless the American people vote to give their money to a third country.
Well said. And last night, as we're finishing up Golan, it came here. It happened here last night.
Yeah.
The 7,500 mile mark happened here last night, and that's only the beginning. And the reason I equate China and Israel has nothing to do. Obviously, they're different wars of different people, but it always goes to the argument of people of the non-protectionists of defending America, meaning we carry the big stick across the world, is that it's far away. Marjorie Taylor Greene can't show it on a map, so it doesn't exist if she can't show it on a map. She's essentially the equivalent of a flat earther. We really need to, and I think Trump knows this better than anybody, we need to focus on defending the United States of America. And we need to focus on defending the people that live in the United States of America.
I will start by saying something that seems unrelated, but it's not. My wife got me eating healthy, and at one point she said to
All
me,
right. She
"You either
got you
pay
what?
the eating healthy," and she said, "You either pay the farmer now or you pay the doctor later." And that's essentially what we're talking about when we're talking about this. If you allow anybody to fester, any negative, any evil left unchecked, it spreads. I mean, history proves it, right? If you look at Hitler, if you look at ISIS, well, we're not going to get involved in that. Pearl Harbor happens. It eventually comes home, and security is the first duty of our government, right? Making sure that we all feel safe, making sure that we all feel like we can live in a place without having to look over our shoulder on a regular basis, like the people last night needed to do. Smart, targeted force prevents endless war. And waiting means the higher cost is going to come later. It doesn't mean that we prevent ourselves from spending that money or prevent ourselves from getting involved. It just means by the time we get involved, it festers. Look no further, not to take it back there again, but it's a perfect example of this, Hamas in Gaza. Do you think Israel, with all of their brilliant surveillance, didn't know they were digging tunnels, didn't know they were smuggling in weapons? They kept saying, it's fine. We're going to keep them over there. It's fine. Let them do their thing. We'll defend the border. It'll be okay. And by the time it actually broke through the border, it had gotten to the point that it had escalated, where they had weapons that they could last for months underground, and they had underground tunnels that were larger than the British subway system. You can't let these things wait. And that's why America first doesn't mean only staying in America and hoping it'll never come to you. Eventually, it will.
And on that note, man, final thoughts on that, because I do think what Golan just raised is 100% the truth. This idea, first of all, we have to remember, man, Biden allowed 20 million unchecked people into our country. 20 million people unchecked into our country. We have no idea how many cells are in this country. And I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to give a rumor. I don't have the number. But we have to assume there's some bad hombres that are
There's that
planning some bad stuff in our country
there
right now.
there are some numbers. Sean Ryan had some former CIA people on, and they estimate that there's between 1,000 and 2,000 sleeper agents already here in the States, both from China, but mostly from Afghanistan, ISIS, Reborn, um, and they're here. And these guys are going to do attacks um, on the homeland that are going to make October 7th look ridiculous. And he used the Mumbai attack where 8 guys in a coordinated effort took down the city for 2 days and slaughtered countless people, innocent people. And they're going to have those types of teams here doing that. So, we couldn't get the Vegas shooter into the Vegas shooter's room for 2 hours. Now, if you had 8 highly trained assassins doing a coordinated attack, it'll make that look like amateur, child's play. I do want to go back to something that Golan said, which was the anti-Israel morons keep on bringing up the fact that Israel allowed Qatar money to go to Hamas. And that is true. It's actually true. The Bibi Netanyahu government did allow Qatar money to go to Hamas. And it's a testament to Israel's striving for peace. And what they thought was these guys are more interested in creating an economically stable environment for their people than they were in waging war. So if we could allow funds to go to the Gaza Strip and they could pay salaries and do e-commerce or whatever, then they would be less likely to attack Israel. And Hamas was putting that out as a decoy and stating that they were more interested in getting more work permits for people to go into Israel to get jobs than they were in starting another war. So the talking point that Israel allowed those funds to go into Gaza is actually a talking point for the state of Israel, for Israel's objectives, which was peace, not war. And the fact that they used a lot of those funds to fund these wars just shows you where their head is. So you can't make peace. There's never going to be peace. The only time there's going to be peace is after you have defeat, and you need a humiliating defeat. After Egypt was defeated by Israel, they came to make peace because they were humiliated. They were done. They had their tails between their legs. And every time a foreign country like the EU and all of those nations talk about cutting off trade with Israel as a response to this war, you are emboldening the terrorists. What you need is a united front. And the question is, where is the United States government when it comes to this? Why isn't the US pressuring the Europeans and saying, hey, if you move forward with this, we're going to make you carry the entire burden of the Ukraine war. We're going to do the same thing to you as to what you're trying to do to our mutual ally, Israel, when they're fighting, for their survival. So it's bewildering that hasn't happened yet. But I do think that America has the power to alleviate some of those distorted pressures that the Europeans are trying to impose on Israel.
A couple days ago, CNN had a headline that Israel was ready. Once again, this is the second time this has happened, where a leaked report of Israel going to attack Iran. And this happened in the Biden administration, and it's happening in the Trump administration. Somebody is leaking this extremely secretive information, and it's starting to get extremely nefarious about who's doing it and where it's coming from.
Well, with the Biden administration, it was different. It was a internal CIA person that leaked the information, I believe, to the Iranians. So, that's quite different than someone within the Trump administration leaking not the explicit details, but leaking that Israel is planning on attacking Iran. And I heard a take on this, which was interesting. And they think that it's the actual Trump administration leaking it so that the Iranians hear it and it gets them moving within the negotiations. And basically, it's the Americans cudgeling them and pushing them and saying, "Look, we're here in good faith. We're here to negotiate an end to this matter non-violently, but know that our buddies right over there are itching. Their trigger finger is itching and they're ready to go. I think that was the impetus for this. I don't think that it was at all harmful to Israel. There was no, actual details leaked. So it makes sense that it's more of a negotiating tactic by the guy who uh, penned the art of the deal to get the Iranians to come to the table.
Matt, go on. I always pray that Mend is correct in his assessments of the great one of Trump's acumen, but we do have to look at certain facts right now of what's going on. Israel's extremely isolated. The UN, for obvious reasons, has always been isolating them, but they seem to be even more isolated right now by our own government. And listen, Trump promised America first. That's the most important thing to Trump, and he's done an exceptional job. I think he's done an exceptional job with the deals he's pulling off, obviously, with getting this his budget deal passed today and the big, beautiful bill. But there's air. And I was part of me was wondering, does Trump have the yips? It's a word he likes to use a lot when in reference to golf, because he's acting a 180 of the way he did his first term on foreign policy, as you discussed the other day with the carrot and the stick.
Hmm. I think it's interesting that you're talking about the yips because the way the media is framing this. There was an article, even right wing, left wing, it doesn't matter. They're all kind of framing it in this way. The New York Post had an article where they were specifically talking about how Israel might, it's all might, it's all speculation, right? Might act independently against Iran if it perceives that the talks happening between the US and Iran are insufficient, right? So right away there, that I think that goes to Men's point that this is a little bit of a quiet threat, right? Hey, if this deal that we're trying to make doesn't go down the way we want to do it, and of course Trump loves making deals, then hey, it's out of my hands. A nice store. I hope nothing happens to it, sort of thing, right? So that may be that carrot and stick that he's actually finally using as opposed to the hey, I hooked you up with some great contracts, so maybe later you can do something for me thing. The issue has been partially that he's trying to remove himself from it with that America First thing, and I don't think it's really working. Right? Iran already responded to this today. They said the IRGC, what is it? The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. This is the Iranian, radical Islamic military force. They said that if Israel attacks, they're holding the U.S. responsible. They're going to attack Israel too, as well, of course, but they're going to hold the U.S. responsible. So they're basically saying we kind of smell what you're doing in placing this stuff, if Mend is correct, and we're not going to let you get away with it. So we'll see. In this case, I think it's interesting that it leaked because it is different than what happened in 2024 when it was a deliberate breach. This time it may be, just kind of smart politics.
Remember, a breach is a breach. A breach is a breach. We have to call balls and strikes. It was leaked to CNN. It wasn't leaked to Fox News. It wasn't leaked to the Washington. It wasn't. Well, I can't think of another conservative outlet. It was leaked to CNN. Somebody leaked this to CNN. If it's for strategy, brilliant strategy. Uh, but with that being said, I pray both of you are correct. We have a horrific problem in America. It's located in Manhattan. It's been around for quite a while. It was started originally by the League of Nations, which became the United Nations, and a historian will tell me which originally was the League of Nations. But Barry Goldwater, for over 60 years ago, said, get the UN out of the US and the US out of the UN. And the UN has caused so much damage. And Trump loves big, beautiful real estate. Man, I'm hearing reverb. Something we are unwilling to discuss. And in January, we pulled out of the WHO. We've pulled out of certain other UN programs, but we could attribute almost every atrocity that's going on around the world to United Nations programs gone amiss, whether it was the WHO, whether it was UNRWA, whether it was anything could be traced back to the UN. The biggest question I think of the day is, does the UN belong in the United States anymore? And this is something I really feel like Donald Trump could address. I wish he would address, and I hope he would address, man, getting the UN out of the United States.
You know, the United Nations, I'm not even sure what the point of it is. To me, it's like a prison yard. You know, in one corner, you're going to have a couple of Bible thumpers and they're out to do good. And then you're going to have a whole bunch of big gangs. And then there's a couple of loners who wound up in prison. If you put them all together for a vote, that vote is not going to be, you know, something that's good and genuine for humanity like the Bible thumpers wanted. It's going to be what the gangbangers wanted, and it might be to off, you know, the Bible thumpers. So you have the exact same thing. You have an organization where everybody gets a vote. Most of the countries in the world are authoritarian regimes committing horrible acts of human rights violations against their own people, and they all get to vote. And guess what? The majority of the votes that come out are against Israel. So it's a giant corrupt organization that doesn't work. It's ineffective. And on top of that, it's a giant bureaucracy that doesn't spend their money efficiently. So they are perpetuating refugee problems with UNRWA. And you have refugees that are the grandchildren of refugees. They never get resettled. It's not an organization that fixes things. So they put out a lot of alarming reports, but they do nothing. It's ineffective. So I believe we should get rid of it. And every country should be working in their own best interest. And that's the solution, because this world body has not prevented a genocide. It hasn't prevented the Rwanda genocide. It hasn't prevented the genocide that's currently taking place in Sudan. It hasn't done anything. So it's useless. Get rid of it.
Well, it's done something. It's caused harm. And the reason we're bringing this up today, go on, is because Bobby Kennedy Jr. a couple of days ago called for other nations to drop out of the World Health Organization, and that's extremely important. This is Bobby Kennedy. This is Bobby Kennedy Jr. And the United Nations is funded mostly by us. It sits in the United States of America. I don't see the need for it anymore. I don't know when the need we actually had it for, other than great, they did name Israel a nation. They agreed to that, so I'm grateful for that. Go on, but sometimes organizations outserve its purpose.
This is one of the most corrupt, most ridiculous organizations that exists worldwide. There has been sexual abuse by the peacekeepers within the organization, human rights hypocrisies. They literally have, you know, Iran and Saudi Arabia and China and Cuba sitting on human rights councils. Iran was heading up the Human Rights Council. If I wrote that into a script, I would get the note, this is ridiculous. Take this out of here. It's unrealistic, and yet it's happening in real life. UNRWA literally are the people raping and kidnapping and murdering people, you know, with Hamas, and they're perpetuating conflict. There's financial mismanagement. Just recently, the Albanese scandal that's going on right now, the money coming into her wasn't coming through the UN. She lied about it. Now it's finally coming out. Failure to prevent genocide, failure to prevent mass atrocities. It goes on and on and on and on. And I'm trying to be nonpartisan, so I'm not even getting into the fact that it is wildly anti-Semitic, wildly anti-Israel. You know, I have an entire podcast and my other podcast, another entire episode where I cover how they actually elected, not hyperbole, but an actual Nazi to run the organization. And when he expanded it, everybody started voting against Israel. Basically, as long as you get together, the jihadis and the communists and the Jew haters, you can make anything pass in the UN. It's an outdated concept. It doesn't make any sense, especially the way it's made up today. But you're bringing up the WHO. WHO, many people don't realize, is a division of the UN. As every other division of the UN is, it's corrupt, it's ridiculous. My wife is half Taiwanese, and I will never forget watching the WHO captured by the Chinese representative giving a speech, and then they were like, and what about Taiwan? And he's like, I think my microphone's not, I can't hear anything. Well, And they said, sir, can you hear us? Yes, I hear you now. Go ahead with another question. They said, no, I really want to talk about Taiwan. And then he just closed the Zoom call because he simply couldn't answer it because they're so ideologically captured that he has to deny reality. This is RFK calling for this is not simply a finger in the eye of the WHO, which they deserve. It's something else. And it's important. Pandemics are something that we are not prepared for. And I mean the world. I don't mean America. I mean the world. And so we had a little dry run with COVID. Okay, fine. Right now, as a whole, there are pandemics that are probably going to come up. We can't deny that. And we do need to be prepared for it. WHO is not the organization that's preparing us. So, what RFK is actually calling for is a worldwide organization that isn't corrupt, maybe fronted by the US, not just us sitting in a corrupt organization, that will be prepared for such things. And that makes absolute sense no matter what side of the aisle you're on.
And to wrap it up, to Golan's point, Mend, and to your point, the United States took so much crap for the Iraq War. A lot of it well deserved. But if you remember, it was always Halliburton, right? Defense contractors. Everybody was being to blame and for the reasons and who was making money and profiteering off the war. We were doing it for oil. Every single thing in the world, America was being called out for. For some reason, the United Nations gets a free pass, a constant free pass for the atrocities they advocate for and they actually perpetrate themselves. And that really is an extremely telling thing that it's not just, this isn't a Jewish, this is an anti-American thing. And that's exactly, we have to call it as it is. So, Mend, your final thoughts on that?
For too long, we've been, as I believe it was Pete Hegseth said, Uncle Sucker. We've been taken advantage of, and you have these hyenas, these jackals that are leeching off of us. They were taking tons of USAID money, and they were aligned with our adversaries, like South Africa, and many other countries. So yes, America first. We should have an organization here that we run, that we spearhead, that takes lead. The World Health Organization, together with the NIH, created the pandemic that we just lived through. So to say that we need that organization to help protect us against pandemics is horseshit. They just did the unthinkable. They created a pandemic. The one thing, the one job they had to try to help mitigate, they created. Therefore, they should be disbanded. We should stop funding them. Absolutely. Pull out of that. It's irrelevant. And when the poor countries have a problem, they could come and beg for charity. If we want to give it, we're a very charitable nation. We're actually the most charitable nation on earth. And we give a lot. So come to us. Don't come to us demanding it as if you're entitled to getting it. Come to us and ask nicely, and we would be more than happy to give it.
And I just want to end with this. It's very easy to play Monday morning quarterback. It's very easy to look at the past and say these are the mistakes we made, and to criticize them and to use them for reasons why we shouldn't do things in the present. We've made mistakes. That is okay. It is okay to make mistakes. Listen, last night the Knicks were up by 16 with 2:30 left and they lost the game. It's a mistake. It's a bad game. Hopefully they don't lose the series. We can't treat our foreign policy and our domestic policy on mistakes that happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. We have new people in there. Hopefully they're making different decisions, but let's not judge our actions by mistakes that have been made in the past. We're the only country that seems to do that, and we really have to stop that. Really want to thank everybody for listening to today's edition of the Daily Cheat Sheet. Find us on Apple, find us on Spotify. You will soon find us on YouTube and every other channel. And don't forget to subscribe. Click that bell. Follow us. Thank you very much.